noticed a change in the acceptance of people with disabilities in the community. People with very severe disabilities, people who maybe manifest a behavior that is different than a lot of other people's, and people are much more tolerant today of seeing people with disabilities, of a variety of disabilities. Hi, I'm John Kemp. I'm President and CEO of Lakeshore Foundation in Birmingham, Alabama.
There are many instances where I have to advocate for myself in this world. I guess a specific time was in school. You know, you have to get accommodations, and they made the school I went to, which was the University of Mississippi, they made it really easy to ask for those accommodations and get them upon, request. And I was really thankful for that process. It made my college experience a lot smoother than it could have been without the accommodations. I was able to get assistance with note-taking services and also with mobility. And when it rains, I was able to get accessibility accommodations. So just things like that made my experience throughout college easier.
There is time in middle school it was kind of hard for me to get up and down the stairs on the bus. And then I was thinking I might need a ramp or a lift from a wheelchair. And then I was scared. Which I don't do kind of stuff, but.
So you asked for an accommodation?
Yes. The school, the teachers, the principal said he's all out.
Right, so how do you go on field trips now?
On a wheelchair.
Do you feel safer?
Yes. Now.
Yeah.
You do now, yeah.
After leaving college, no, it definitely gets harder because you don't know. A lot of times you don't know who to reach out to get certain things done. So it's like it's always a research process within the world outside of school and things like that, where who to go to. I think maybe part of the problem could be that there could be a list of resources at businesses for people with disabilities to have access to when there may be a barrier that presents itself. But oftentimes the businesses don't even know about resources, let alone about the ADA.
What you said could be more accessible in fitness places.
Yeah.
Okay. For equipment, not all places. What were you telling me earlier? And I know that you touched on it before, but that not all places have what?
Wow.
Have a ramp to get in or accessible equipment. Okay. What about pools? You love to swim. What do you need for pools?
A ramp.
Yeah. And not all pools have ramps or lifts, right? What else did you say?
Restrooms.
What about the restrooms? Is it hard to find a restroom sometimes?
Yeah.
What about your friends? What do they need?
Help.
They need help.
Sometimes my friends were pull-ups or like that. I needed a changing table.
A changing table.
Changing table, yeah.
We don't have one in the school, but we have it back there.
That's a great idea. That would be very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what happens if there's no changing table?
Then they can't help.
Right, they have to sit on the floor. It's not clean, is it?
No.
No.
Society has accepted us as social equals, getting close to being socially equal. But in the employment arena, it's terrible. We still, as employers, still don't think we can do the job, even with accommodations. And we have made very little progress in this area. So it's nice to have us around, have us buying stuff from companies, spending our money, whatever little meager amounts that we have. But when it comes to employing us, that barrier still exists. And a lot of it is attitudinal barrier. So we think we've solved all the problems. We've got Jan, and we've got these resources, Job Accommodation Network, and a lot of people know a lot about accommodations, a lot of lawsuits filed over it. But we are not there yet, and it still rests in the minds, the bias rests in the minds of the employers and the supervisors who are not being fair with people with disabilities.
So my real estate agent and I had a conversation about how there really is, I hate to use the word market because that makes it sound like it's just for profit. There's an opportunity for every industry, including real estate industry, to be more inclusive and to be advocates for individuals with disabilities. We're all one step away from having a disability. 1 second, 1 accident, 1 diagnosis, whatever, we will all be touched. And so you don't always think of that, but when you have customers who have unique sets of needs, like accessibility, the market really needs to do a better job at making those features in the listings available to families like ours. So we don't have to do as much looking. I mean, we pulled up in so many driveways and in front of so many houses that we did not even get out of the car because they were not accessible. We could not even allow her to get out and get into the house. It wasn't going to be safe. But the pictures didn't show that immediately, and the real estate agent showing us the house didn't know. So having that as just an immediate feature on real estate websites would be helpful for families like ours.
Exiting college and looking for apartments here in Birmingham, there was a time when I went to an apartment and I was told that a unit was quote unquote accessible, but my wheelchair would not fit through certain doorways. And I was told that that wasn't something that they could change. And if I needed that accommodation, then I would have to do it myself. I would have to get it done myself. But it didn't seem reasonable for an apartment that would never belong to me, in the end. So I didn't see why I would have to be responsible for such cost of me to access a place to live when it's not a permanent situation. Unfortunately, it's very common. Finding accessible housing is not easy at all. There are many apartments that claim to be accessible that are not, because one standard of accessibility doesn't fit us all. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation when you're dealing with people with mobility aids, especially. So yes, it's very difficult finding accessible living. I think that realtors, construction people, all these people need to get together and understand universal design. Universal design doesn't just benefit people with disabilities, it benefits everyone. For me personally, I have a car that has hand controls, so I'm able to provide myself with transportation, but I have heard nightmares about public transportation, dealing with people with mobility aids or people with other disabilities, hearing disabilities or visual disabilities, and I've heard some things about public transportation that can be better.
Public transport in Alabama is poor. In Birmingham, really terrible. Can do a whole lot better. Here we are in Homewood, a suburb, but we have paratransit, and paratransit is irreliable and very difficult to plan and schedule. A lot of people have to make appointments a day or two in advance just to get paratransit to come. If you don't have we have it as a regular stop here, so that's better. But if you're waiting at home for paratransit, you have to make your appointment a day in advance at least.
I've heard about the time that it takes to arrange for transportation and the time that it actually arrives and how they are late to certain appointments because of these things. I've heard that, you know, not all of the transportation has the mobility accessibility features that they need. So, you know, you have to rely on one or two buses.
Does anybody want to trade places with us? No. Nobody says, oh please, I'd love to have a disability and I'd love to, you know, call paratransit and have them come and take care of my needs. That's not, you know, nobody ever has to switch with us, because when I decide I want to go someplace, I go and get in my car and I drive there. And I can get out and I can walk short distances and I have those benefits. A lot of people don't have the same opportunities. We should never buy another bus that's not fully accessible. We should have routes that are completely appropriate, that serve the medical needs, the housing needs, the employment needs of people with disabilities.
So there are some things that the ADA can improve on when it comes to public housing, public transportation, when it comes to just access in this world that was not originally built for us. It could be so much more accessible. When there are older buildings, the building gives you the excuse that they're grandfathered in, and it's like, what even is that? Because I feel like I don't care if the building is older, it should still be accessible. I just think that after 30 plus years, there needs to be some revision to the ADA.
Okay.
Just to make things more accessible than they've been over the years.
If I were to rewrite the ADA today, I would probably limit the, you know, I would take away the 15 employees threshold that then invokes coverage. And I'd say every employer needs to be acting responsibly to all diverse populations, and there shouldn't be a threshold of 15 or more. Now, I'm sure all the EEOC folks will be jumping up and down and screaming, but you know, when you think about it, why allow discrimination to occur in employment if you have 14 full-time equivalent employees, but at 15, then you have to comply. As a person with a disability, I think I should have fair treatment by all employers at all times.
I would say, well, for one, I would say stop holding up on the laws. Like, you keep these bills for months and years, and it's like it's not important. Like, really take the time to read them, hear us out, and get them passed. That is really the main thing. Listen to disabled people when we tell you what we need.
I don't think lawmakers fully appreciate the contributions of people with disabilities and what we can make to society, to employers, and to our communities. One of these days, we're going to be much better represented in our communities. There are going to be more of us who are elected and understand what disability civil rights and human rights are. We're going to be imposing those and seeking those as part of any legislation that is required. That inclusion has to be a necessary component, disability inclusion has to be a necessary component to any kind of federal or state funding that goes out. So either as they grant monies to organizations and individuals and subgrants and sub-grants, all those should carry with them the obligation to deliver programs and services in an accessible way and to deliver employment opportunities in a non-discriminatory way towards people with disabilities. So let's get rid of these thresholds, these arbitrary thresholds of dollar amounts and a number of employees, and let's start thinking of us as respected, contributing members of society. You know, certainly allowing us to live a good life is very important, but preventing the onset of disability and the furtherance of disabilities to the greatest extent possible will add quality years to people's lives. And I think that's what Lakeshore is all about. That's what I'm all about. I think any good advocate is all about. Let's live good lives.
In my high school, there was a separate wing that popped up. And the yearbook had a section for the students in that wing. And as a mom, I look back in that yearbook, and things that stand out to me are the terms that are absolutely unacceptable to this day. But I see the smiling faces of those children who have developmental disabilities, because that's my kid, you know, and I think about how much my child looks forward to picture day and going to school and being included in all of those things, for people who make the laws to think about for the ADA, how it can be expanded, is if you wake up every single day and you go to bed every single night and know that accessibility teaches inclusion, and inclusion creates accessibility, meaning that if you make it accessible, then those who are not like you are going to come. If you try to expand the accessibility of different ways for people to come, if they can just get there first, if they can participate, even at the minimum first, inclusion happens, because then you're going to start looking around and wondering where they are if they're not there. You're going to start missing your family members, your friends, because you've made it for them to get there before, and if they don't show up, you're going to miss them. That's inclusion. But if I could tell them anything, just wake up every day and think, just one more thing can make it more accessible. It's not about spending a lot of money or making this huge investment. It doesn't have to be. It's if you think about how can I get the extra person there to allow them to participate and to find out what they need. Don't ever exclude individuals with disabilities with the planning either. You have to ask. Don't assume that everyone's going to share what they need. You have to include to be able to ask the question. And I go to bed with that every single night, about how this world will be different for my child when I'm not here, because mom's not going to be here forever, unfortunately. So we all can make it better.